Welcome, everybody, to Mud Flood Was Armageddon. Mud Flood was Armageddon. Don't let them tell you anything else unless they're willing to debate you in a fair and honest way. I see I'm a couple minutes late here. I apologize for that. I was making this coffee, and it's one of these ones I don't rarely get them, but it's like a flavored with chocolate or something. So I was going to give it a try, and somehow it must clog the filters or something because I'm used to it draining through at a certain rate, and this I had to start 2 cups and just take half a cup with me. So glad to see you're here, Scotty. This is going to be interesting. We're going to be getting all over World War One, and hopefully everything's going to sound good and that everything is going to be all right. If you want to hop on here, Scotty, feel free. I like to have your opinions on some of these things. Otherwise, anybody else will see what happens there. I suppose I have to hit that thing to make it go in the chat room. Be careful what you think for. You might be easy to go like, well, I would just like to think it and it would happen. Well, we see what's happening with artificial intelligence and things like that now. So before, and this is probably going to be a longer show. And I've got a couple of videos we're going to watch before we get into the American Expeditionary Forces that I think either one or two things, and this is announcing a theory that I talked about a couple of years ago that I was going to think about some more. And now I'm ready to say, as vaguely as possible, this American Expeditionary Exposition was either to kill the Tsar of Russia or to try to rescue him. But everything, Russia was our great friend, and it was kind of forced a tenuous relationship in World War II. But so I just want you to file that away for a little bit here. So you give it a little more screen room to your view. Hopefully you can see that now. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and just make it full screenage. Just so that you can, get a lesson in, because we're going to look at some World War I posters before we get into the videos and then dig into the Wikipedia and some PDFs and some whatever else we can dig up on this alleged hit or failed rescue of Tsar Nicholas, the number 2. So this is just by this calligraphy or just the term boys is colloquial language. And this is from a war poster of Australia in World War One, used to make the reader feel comfortable and to target the intended audience of young men of fighting age. That's who they're looking for. Australia is the pinkish red of the British Empire. I guess their maps fade. So at the time on the map, Australia was usually a faded pink here. So that would make them visually appeal to patriotism. The soldier appears manly and determined. He is actively seeking the boys back home. Appeal to inclusion. You're invited to come over here and die. The Dardanelles is in yellow, and I'm sure that's so it's easily to be remembered. The orientation of the soldier is slightly above the viewer. Thus, we are looking at him. Yeah, it makes him seem more important. Well, he's over there fighting. Colors are used, mainly muted, and reflect the khaki uniform of the Australian soldier. The figure of the soldier is the salient image, as he is the central figure. Okay, what would you do with this one? If you had to fill in those blanks, man, You are wanted. Where does the inclusion one go? Right there. That's for the inclusion. All right. Thank you for that. Thanks, posters. Here's my favorite one. Look at there. There's a dad and his daughter is going like, "Hey, look, I'm reading this history book. I did my homework, and they're talking about the war." And the son is listening. He's down there playing with his soldiers because war is a part of our culture. They just put it out in everything. And what do you think that daughter's asking? Daddy, what did you do in the war? The Great War, not the kind of. Oh, what's this? No, what these up with these things. You never know, right? So there's that one poster right there. I got that. That's one of I've seen these before. Let's look at some more. Women help America's sons. Wow, what happened there? Let me try that half a cup of coffee. Wonder if that's 4 separate posters. Okay, I know it looks pretty busy. I didn't get a second look at it with fresh eyes till I had that drink of coffee. Now I can see that's 4 separate posters because otherwise that's way too much stimuli. So as you're breaking them down, I want you to break them down to be due down. Wait, that's it? You have to click on each one. Look at this one. The Mad Brute. The Mad Brute. Hey, this one looks PG-13. Oh my goodness, I can't believe this is PG not. Oh my goodness. They were just putting that right out there in the public. U.S. Army 660 market. That's in going to defend America because these see that hat that makes you know that this is the German Hun, and this flared up mustache is supposed to make it look like Kaiser Wilhelm. And see what it spelled it culture, because Germany was always about protecting their culture. So he must be coming over here because he was going like, Columbia is our goddess, doggone it. Oh, these guys must sell furniture or something. Or they're trying to be like, look how cool this would look in this room. I get it. I'm clicking on the ones that they're for sale. I see that now. You guys are probably laughing at me in the chat room. Hey, here's one. Hold up your end. See, because these things, they take 2 people. This girl here, she can't do it with the bombs exploding in the background. I'm not saying it looks like anything that's in the news, but everything looks like in the news. And I got that one thing where you see things they go like, no, that's not really this, it's that. Almost every day. $100 million. That poor girl, she can't carry that by herself. Hold your end up. I guess that's personalize it. Where's the inclusion part? Oh, the inclusion part is she needs someone to help her. Follow me, very manly man. Your country needs you, and he won't let you down. I think that's what that one's saying right there. The call to duty. Join the army. Patriotism. I see a lot of flag waving, way too much flag waving, mostly on the mainstream media's news departments. A lot of the people are getting more disgusted, like saying, you know what, I kind of like the people in my neighborhood or my church or my family, but the rest of these people, they seem like they're crazy, man. You know they're right too. Oh, look at this. Since when did they let people this old? You know, they got age limits in the army, Grandpa. Were things that bad? War savings stamps issued by the United States government. See, this is Dick and this is Jane, and somewhere they have a dog named Spot. And this is, he's a, I can't even tell the rank. He's a general or something. This is probably the fascist government rulers during that time frame when they were saying, let's redecorate the United States Capitol with fascists everywhere. That sounds fun. I'm just rambling on. I'm supposed to be showing a video, huh? We're supposed to be getting prepared and for some big theory or something. Oh, I already told you. What are you in red? See, this is before Edward Bernays. You know who that is, right? Yeah. That's the guy who did the brainwashing stuff that everybody loves so much and go like, we're going to do this the rest of our life. How do you want your wife to view you? That's kind of even like, you know, and your children later when you think about it. Don't bring shame on your family name. Does it sound like they were winning, or were they trying to be like, scratch the bottom of the barrel? Prove your loyalty to the king. Be British, boys. Winchester Cathedral, you're breaking me down. Now look at that. That's a war poster, I guess. I have no idea, nor do I want to know the shenanigans behind that. Let's look at some of the. This one says a French war poster, so we'll try to pick out the big ones. These are what the French were showing here, so probably get ready for your PG-13. There they have a young Adolf before he went to Germany fighting with a young kilted man. The London County and Westminster Bank of Paris. Come on, let's fight those Germans. And these are the Bene Gesserit witches. They've just recruited a young Paul Atreides, and they're about to test him with the Gom Japor. There's somebody on it said, like, I need to go to America. I'm taking my flag and I'm leaving. Another banking poster. Now, without that little brim he's holding on to, how would you know that's not a ball? You just know it because it's a hat. It's flat, baby. We live on a flat plane. All right. I want to say hi to people now. Hey, Scotty. Hola, Luther. Sticks of TNT. Be careful with that stuff. Victoria, always good to see you. Angie Ray, you can come back sometime and play your guitar. Patrick, I really appreciate it. Some of you lurkers should just chime in because there's Stellar Twag. And we're going to have, because this is, you know, I don't know how much I'm going to stop during this. And let's see, it's, this is, yep, this is the one that we have to sit through first. So I probably will be doing more stop and drop commentary on the first one, repeating now that there's more people in here. I'll put a link in here in case anybody has any ideas about were the American soldiers in the Arctic It's the American Expeditionary Forces, the AEF. Were they trying to kill Tsar Nicholas II, or were they trying to rescue them? And what were they doing, messing with the quote unquote white Russians in a war against the red Russians? And guess who's the communists? Yeah, the red Russians. And guess who's the royalty? Well, there's only two of them. Shoot, I ruined that for you. That could have been a good one. Well, here it is. Check this out. I skipped most of this part because you already know all about. The only thing you know about reminder of Franz Ferdinand is that in the world's version of things, that's what set off the rapidly escalating chain of events that led to the Great War. Oh, you thought I was going to say World War I. No, we got to get that in their mind that they were sold the vision of this being the war to end all wars. It's washing over you.
Chain of events. Austria-Hungary, like many countries around the world, blamed the Serbian government for the attack and hoped to use the incident as justification for settling the question of Serbian nationalism once and for all. German support. Because mighty Russia supported Serbia, Austria-Hungary waited to declare war until its leaders received assurance from German leader Kaiser Wilhelm II that Germany would support their cause. Austro-Hungarian leaders feared that a Russian intervention would involve Russia's ally France and possibly Great Britain as well. On 5th July, Kaiser Wilhelm secretly pledged his support, giving Austria-Hungary a so-called carte blanche or blank check, assurance of Germany's backing in the case of war. The dual monarchy of Austria-Hungary then sent an ultimatum to Serbia, which such harsh terms as to make it impossible to accept. The war breaks out. Convinced that Austria-Hungary was readying for war, the Serbian government ordered the Serbian army to mobilize and appealed to Russia for assistance. On July 28, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia, and the tenuous peace between Europe's great powers quickly collapsed. Within a week, Russia, Belgium, France, Great Britain, and Serbia had lined up against Austria-Hungary and Germany, and World War I had begun. Western Front and the Schlieffen Plan. According to an aggressive military strategy known as the Schlieffen Plan, named for its mastermind, German Field Marshal Alfred von Schlieffen, Germany began fighting World War I on two fronts, invading France through neutral Belgium in the west and confronting Russia in the east. Germany's Grand Schlieffen Plan to conquer France entailed a wheeling movement of the northern wing of its armies through central Belgium to enter France near Lille. It would turn west near the English Channel and then south to cut off the French retreat. If the plan succeeded, Germany's armies would simultaneously encircle the French army from the north and capture Paris. On August 4, 1914, German troops crossed the border into Belgium.
Wow, this is really detailed. We'll just hit a few of them in. Just sample this for a little while. Too much detail.
Erich von Falkenhayn to secure victory for Germany on the Western Front. The aim was to crush the French army before the Allies grew in strength.
See, I have to show these videos that have this Creative Commons thing now. That's how I make my videos, where anybody can copy them. And for that, I'll give them a thumbs up. But it's still kind of, I get it, yeah. Where's all the bit? We need these pictures bigger. Oh, am I complaining too much? It sounds like it to me.
Through the full deployment of British forces. To achieve his aim, Falkenhayn needed to target a part of the French front where strategic necessity and national pride combined.
Oh, did you wait? Look at this next sentence. The ancient fortress. I think what she means to say is Starford, baby.
The ancient fortress city of Verdun on the River Meuse was just such a place. By securing the heights on the east bank of the river, the Germans would dominate the surrounding area, making it crucial for the French to retake the ground or lose Verdun. Here Falkenhayn planned to use more than 1,200 artillery pieces to destroy French units, while making limited use of German infantry to minimize his own casualties. At 4 a.m. on 21st February 1916, the battle began, with a massive artillery bombardment and a steady advance by troops of the German Fifth Army. General Philippe Pétain was then given command of the French Second Army at Verdun. He organized his forces to defend in depth by establishing a series of mutually supporting strongpoints rather than pushing all his troops into the vulnerable frontline trenches. Pétain also rotated units through Verdun on a regular basis, and while this exposed much of the French
Man, oh man, oh Manischewitz. What's this? Hey, we fought the Japanese in World War One. Who knew? They were supposed to be allies, but anyway, we'll get to whatever that is. It's pretty cool, I know that. But isn't there something better about Verdun than that? What is that logging? Remember, I did a bunch of videos about 5 years ago about the Loganagar crater. Does anybody remember how to spell that? Creator. I don't even know how to spell crater. I'll just leave it like that. I suppose I should go back and at least get the correct spelling. Come on. Anyway, it's this large crater that they started undermining. Actually, the term undermining was meant to because of what happened when you go underneath. Like a lot of times, the siege castles didn't work. You know, going over the top. In Verdun, what I was trying to do, this very awkward deal here, was just show you that that's where undermining started in World War One. It's where the war started. This Verdun, and it had this. It's something with a crater. I'm doing that wrong, and it's all because of a misspelled word. It is crater. So I was messing it up. I hope. No. Well, I'll have to find that for you on another show. Doggone it. But anyway, that's where it started at Verdun. This is wait till I hope she goes over some of the sad statistics. And all of those people paid attention to the posters and marched off to war for all of the reasons that they gave them.
Army to the battle. It ensured troops did not spend long periods of time at the front. The French also greatly increased the number of artillery pieces at Verdun, leading to the Germans suffering equally from incessant shelling. On 24th June, the Allied bombardment began on the Somme. The German offensive at Verdun was reduced in order to reinforce the Somme front. The battle closed down on 15 December as winter conditions and results of fighting on the Somme made further activity almost impossible. The French had lost 377,000 men.
Oh, look how many the Germans lose.
And the Germans 330,000. Falkenhayn's plan to destroy the French army had failed. Even worse, from a German perspective, the heavy losses at Verdun, combined with even greater casualties, suffered on the Somme to create a manpower crisis within the army that would become increasingly difficult to resolve as the war continued. The Eastern Front. On the Eastern Front of World War I, Russian forces invaded the German-held regions of East Prussia and Poland, but was stopped short by German and Austrian forces at the Battle of Tannenberg in late August 1914. Combined with fierce Allied resistance in France, the ability of Russia's huge war machine to mobilize relatively quickly in the East ensured a longer, more grueling conflict instead of the quick victory Germany had hoped to win under the
Schlieffen Plan. It's always easy to surprise somebody, go to war, but then you've got to feed that army. You've got to feed those. And in World War I, at the beginning, before they ran out of food and money, they were having to feed 70,000 prisoners at a time. So that's how it all started, with the Germans just ready to take over and everybody thinking, because who knows if they ever really had a big war. We'll let you sneak up on the Gallipoli thing, but here's their version of how the United States entered. We were backstabbing our way into it. We were going to go either to kill that Tsar or rescue him, and got there too late. Time will tell.
Housatonic was sunk by a German U-boat. On February 22nd, Congress passed a $250 million arms appropriations bill intended to make the United States ready for war. In late March, Germany sunk 4 more U.S. merchant ships, and on April 2nd, President Wilson appeared before Congress and called for a declaration of war against Germany. 4 days later, his request was granted. The Galipoli Campaign. At dawn of 25th April 1915, Allied troops landed on the Gallipoli Peninsula in Ottoman Turkey. The Gallipoli Campaign was the land-based element of a strategy intended to allow Allied ships to pass through the Dardanelles, capture Constantinople, now Istanbul, and ultimately knock Ottoman Turkey out of the war.
Ultimately knock Ottoman Turkey out of the war. Could this possibly turn into their Dunkirk in World War I, where they, oops, somebody come help me?
Allied success in the campaign could have weakened the Central Powers, allowed Britain and France to support Russia, and helped to secure British strength in the Middle East. But success depended on Ottoman Turkish opposition quickly crumbling. General Sir Ian Hamilton decided to make 2 landings. Both landings were quickly contained by determined Ottoman troops, and neither the British nor the Anzacs were able to advance. After a failed attack on the Dardanelles, the strait linking the Sea of Marmara with the Aegean Sea, Allied forces led by Britain launched a large-scale land invasion of the Gallipoli Peninsula in April 1915. The invasion also proved a dismal failure, and in January 1916, Allied forces staged a full retreat from the shores of the peninsula After some
Full retreat. That's just like Dunkirk. That's just like the United States in the Korean War. Full retreat. But then later on, the United Nations said, oh, we won.
suffering, 250,000 casualties. Battle of Isonzo.
Look at you guys. Look at you guys, man. You're doing a master's level catch up on World War One, and you get it, man.
With little participation by Germany, its 15 parts and 440 articles reassigned German boundaries and assigned liability for reparations. After strict enforcement for 5 years, the French ascended to the modification of important provisions. Germany agreed to pay reparations under the Dawes Plan and the Young Plan, but those plans were cancelled in 1932, and Hitler's rise to power and subsequent actions rendered moot.
Yeah, and in the United States, we got ready to confiscate all the gold because that's the year FDR, everybody's hero, was elected. And when he got into power, that first 100 days, whoo.
The remaining terms of the treaty. The treaty, negotiated between January and June 1919 in Paris, was written by the Allies with almost no participation by the Germans. The negotiations revealed a split between the French, who wanted to dismember Germany to make it impossible for it to renew war with France, and the British and the Americans, who did not want to create pretexts for a new war.
No, they needed 440 articles.
The eventual treaty included 15 parts and 440 articles. Part 1 created the Covenant of the New League of Nations, which Germany was not allowed to join until 1926. Part 2 specified Germany's new boundaries, giving Eupen Malmedy to Belgium, Alsace-Lorraine back to France, substantial eastern districts to Poland, Memel to Lithuania, and large
I'm just saying the eastern districts of Poland had all of the natural resources. And then Germany came back for them later with a vengeance.
portions of Schleswig to Denmark. Part 3 stipulated a demilitarized zone and separated the Saar from Germany for 15 years. Part 4 stripped Germany of all its colonies, and Part 5 reduced Germany's armed forces to very low levels and prohibited Germany from possessing certain classes of weapons while committing the Allies to eventual disarmament as well. Part 8 established Germany's liability for reparations without stating a specific figure and began with Article 231, in which Germany accepted the responsibility of itself and its allies for the losses and damages of the Allies as a consequence of the war imposed upon them by the aggression of Germany and her allies. Part 9 imposed numerous other financial obligations upon Germany. The German government signed the treaty under protest. Right-wing German parties attacked it as a betrayal, and terrorists assassinated several politicians whom they considered responsible. The US Senate refused to ratify the treaty, and the US government took no responsibility for most of its provisions. For 5 years, the French and the Belgians tried to enforce the treaty quite rigorously, leading in 1922 to their occupation of the Ruhr. In 1924, however, the Anglo-American financial pressure compelled France to scale down its goals and end the occupation, and the French assented to modifying important provisions of the treaty in a new series of agreements.
Okay, now those new series of agreements, they were contingent on the years that passed. They decided we better fake this thing and we'll call it quantum physics. And we'll be able to say that through new math, there is no ether, and that we've developed an atomic bomb and we can go this way and fool everybody. And that's getting ahead of myself.
As the years passed, hatred of the Versailles Treaty and its authors settled into a smoldering resentment in Germany that would, 2 decades later, be counted among the causes of World War II. Legacy of the First World War. World War I brought about massive social upheaval as millions of women entered the workforce to support men who went to war and to replace those who never came back. The First Global War also helped to spread one of the world's
I just have to say a word about women. They brought them into the workforce, they tricked them into these voting rights, and then they blamed the women on prohibition when the mafia had that planned all the time so they could make more money. Because at this point, the Chinese mafia hadn't shown their face yet. And well, that didn't come until the commissions after World War II when they said, and now you're going to sell heroin and you're going to buy it from us. And it goes like this: sunshine on my shoulder.
deadliest global pandemics, the Spanish flu epidemic of 1918, which killed an estimated 20 to 50 million people. World War I has also been referred to as the first modern war. Many of the technologies we now associate with military conflict, machine guns, tanks, aerial combat, and radio communications, were introduced on a massive scale during World War I. The severe effects that chemical weapons, such as mustard gas and phosgene, had on soldiers and civilians during World War I galvanized public and military attitudes against their continued use. The Geneva Convention agreements, signed in 1925, restricted the use of chemical and biological agents in warfare and remains in effect till today.
I want you to rest assured that you are not being attacked by a chemical or biological weapon because there's our treaties against it, people.
Hypernationalism. Nationalism gave citizens excessive confidence in their nation, their governments, and their military strength. It assured them that their country was fair and righteous. In contrast, nationalist ideas demonized rival nations, caricaturing them as aggressive, scheming, and deceitful. It convinced many citizens their nation was being threatened by the plotting and scheming of its rivals. To paraphrase the historian Lawrence Rosenthal, quote, a new and aggressive nationalism, different from its predecessors.
No, you know me. 5 years, 3 different times, English 101. Just kidding. But I can't. Now, is it a paraphrase or are you going to open a quote here?
Emerged in Europe at the end of the 19th century. The new nationalism engaged the fierce us and them group emotions, loyalty inwards and aggression outwards, that characterize human relations at simpler sociological levels, like the family or the tribe. What was new was attaching these passions to the nation. In its outward looking dimension, the new nationalism was fully a movement of the age of imperialism, of the enterprise of great powers. Unquote. Nationalist and militarist rhetoric assured people that if war erupted, their nation would emerge victorious. British nationalism was based on their naval power as well as the economic might of the British Empire. Along with this, nationalism was propagated through literature which often employed racial stereotyping or innuendo. The German was painted as cold, cruel, and calculating. The Russian was an uncultured barbarian, and so on. The Germans placed great faith in Prussian military efficiency, their industrial base, growth in armaments, and their expanding fleet of battleships.
Within Russia, they believed, much like I do, that the Russian Orthodox Church and the Greek Orthodox Church at that time were to be listened to far above the Roman Catholic Nazi-loving helpers of the eugenics movement. There I go, getting ahead of myself one more time.
Within Russia, the Tsar believed his throne and empire were protected by God, as well as Russia's massive standing army of 1.5 million men, Europe's largest peacetime land force. Another important form of nationalism was on the rise in southern Europe. This nationalism was not about supremacy or military power, but the right of ethnic groups to independence, autonomy, and self government. With the world divided into large empires and spheres of influence, many different regions, races, and religious groups wanted freedom from their imperial masters. Nationalist groups contributed to the weakening of the Ottoman Empire in Eastern Europe by seeking to throw off Muslim rule.
She said, seeking to throw off Muslim rule. And Muslims were only introduced to history after the rewriting of one of the wars, because there's no proof that it ever existed before the 1711 loosing of Satan and the last remnants after the reaping of the 1,000 years. So this is all part of their plan, and that is the echo of the future that I'm hearing and seeing. There is a condensed version. Now, if you don't think a lot happened between World War I and World War II, stick around.
No nationalist movement had a greater impact in the outbreak of war than Slavic groups in the Balkans. Pan-Slavism, the belief that the Slavic peoples of Eastern Europe should have their own nation, was strongest in Serbia, and was particularly opposed to the Austro-Hungarian Empire and its control and influence of the region. Other propositions that have been put forth: Marxist historians insist that the war was the inevitable outcome of monopolistic capitalist imperialism. Arno Meyer proposes domestic political and social unrest and the dynamics of counter-revolution as decisive factors. Peter Lowenberg argues in reply that this role belongs to the fundamental drives revealed by psychodynamic theory. Statesmen and military leaders everywhere in 1914, especially in the Central Powers, felt themselves to be in the grip of uncontrollable forces. They sensed that their calculations were all futile. It required certain contingent events to start a war in 1914. But this does not mean the whole development was purely contingent, with nothing inevitable about it. World War I was a normal development in international relations. Events had been building toward it for a long time.
I disagree vehemently and think that there's nothing normal about the development of World War I. A bunch of backstabbery shenanigans going on, bushwhacking people. Watch out.
Thus, there is no need to explain it as a deviation from the norm. What is unexpected about the war and needs explanation is its long postponement. This needs to be answered with regards toward the intervention as the biggest error in modern history. Ferguson said there had been no immediate threat to Britain, which could have faced a Germany-dominated Europe at a later date on its own terms, instead of rushing in unprepared, which led to catastrophic costs. What's more, it would have been in Britain's interests to stay out in 1914. The argument that Britain was forced to act in 1914 to secure its borders and the Channel ports, although seems very seductive, has one massive flaw in it, which is that Britain tolerated exactly that situation happening when Napoleon overran the European continent and did not immediately send land forces to Europe. It wasn't until the Peninsular War that Britain actually deployed ground forces against Napoleon. So strategically, if Britain had not gone to war in 1914, it would still have had the option to intervene later, just as it had the option to intervene after the Revolutionary Wars had begun underway for some time. Creating an army more or less from scratch and then sending it into combat against the Germans was a recipe for disastrous losses. And if one asks whether this was the best way for Britain to deal with the challenge posed by Imperial Germany, then the answer is no. Even if Germany had defeated France and Russia, it would have had a pretty massive challenge on its hands trying to run the new German dominated Europe, and would have remained significantly weaker than the British Empire in naval and financial terms. Given the resources that Britain had available in 1914, A better strategy would have been to wait and deal with the German challenge later when Britain could respond on its own terms, taking advantage of its much greater naval and financial capabilities.
Okay, so we're pretty much up to speed on that. Let's see. Still appreciate people sticking around learning it. Hoping you're having a good time in the chat room. Welcome, Ella. Glad to see you. Everybody wants to say hola, hello. So now we're going to get to the American Expeditionary Forces. And this video I think might be a little bit more, you know, it has more pictures. This is going to take where you could sit back, and I still want a lot of do what you got to do, however the spirit leads you to keep things going and flowing in a hopefully peaceful way in the chat room. But you're going to see so many things now that your eyes are open. The pictures you're gonna like, they're driving past a star fort, and you're not going to want me to stop and drop commentary every single time you see it, because you're going to be seeing it all the time. Welcome, Mr. Sean, and I hope that everybody's having a good time, because all I have is like one tab pulled up on the American Expeditionary Forces, and somehow I want us to go through them together and be able to say, well, did they go there to kill the Tsar or to rescue the Tsar? But what in the world were they doing in northern Siberia? What else are you going to do on a Tuesday night, right? Where is that video? Here's those guys. Here they are. Here they are in Vladivostok. That's the way they had their Smokey the Bear hats. Does that flag got gold fringe on it? I can't tell. I don't think so. I think I'm just too suspicious. Is that hey, did they march to the Great War? Even in Vladivostok, was it, were they just like, hey, we like living in the remnants of the Golden Age. Why are we going to have a world war and start blowing them up? No, they probably didn't say that. They didn't know it was coming. They know not what they're doing. Here they are. Well, looks like they've left the city of Vladivostok. There's that flag. Can't tell. Here's this guy here. He's like at the marathon. Who needs a drink of water? Hey, everything was done on trains, man. This is I think you're going to see a lot of deals on that Trans-Siberian Railway. So we'll get back to this and we'll try to pick out some of these things and track them down, man. Oh, there it is. There it is. I got to open it now so that we can get right on it later. The audio is a little sketchy, but as you can see, I'm doing Creative Commons. I'm doing everything I can to stay in there. Man, those copyright strikes suck. The audio kind of straightens out a little bit.
Post at Camp Fremont in California to Kansas City. There he was to meet the Secretary of War at the Baltimore Hotel to receive instructions that would begin one of the most unique military adventures of the 20th century. In Kansas City, Secretary of War Newton D. Baker was waiting for the general with instructions that had been carefully formulated and approved by the President of the United States. President Woodrow Wilson had become increasingly aware of the disorder and confusion resulting from Russia's withdrawal in the war against Germany. The Treaty of Brest-Litovsk threatened the Allied war effort and gave Germany the opportunity of seizing considerable war materiel, which had been sent to Russia while that country had been a combatant. The Secretary of War handed General Graves a sealed envelope containing our policy in the Russian situation. The general was informed he would command an American expeditionary force in Siberia. Secretary Baker offered this advice: watch your step. You will be walking on eggshells loaded with dynamite.
Man, don't tell me that guy doesn't look like the bad guy in those early 007 movies.
By late summer 1918, the populace of Vladivostok, Siberia, watched the arrival of the first American troops that would comprise our expeditionary force. By the end of September, Major General Graves and his carefully selected staff were ready to begin their military adventure in the Siberian sector. Under the general's command were the 27th Infantry Regiment, the 31st Infantry Regiment, the 17th Evacuation Hospital support units. The expeditionary force totaled 10,000 officers and men. From August 1918 into April 1920, Siberia was to be the home of this expedition. Cities such as Vladivostok, Khabarovsk, Harbin, Chita, Krasnoyarsk, and Omsk would be entered in the activity reports of this expedition.
This background music kind of reminds me of the old NFL films when they're showing highlights, except this is of war, you know, bum, 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 bum.
This big picture is a glimpse into that long ago American expeditionary force in Siberia.
For people that don't need the details, here's the big picture.
The city of Vladivostok, with its strategic Golden Horn Bay, was the geographical center for our expeditionary force.
It was a star fort, baby.
From his headquarters on Svetlanskaya Street, General Graves was now prepared to follow the objectives outlined in President Wilson's aid memoir. Objective 1 was to render all possible assistance to Czechoslovakian troops who had become isolated in Russia as a result of that country's capitulation to Germany. Czech military units were now making their way toward Vladivostok. The next task was to enable them to leave Russia and to return to their homeland, or, if possible, to use them in a reconstituted Eastern Front, which had by now collapsed. The Czechoslovakian army had distinguished itself in combat against Germany, and the safety of these seasoned troops was considered essential by
what is that child doing in the picture, standing in between the gaps? And I see other ones back there. What is this, the first time they ever taken over a country or something?
Allies. Objective 2 was to guard military supplies and equipment which had been shipped to Russia during her participation in the war against Germany. With Russia no longer a combatant, Allied military supplies were to be protected from seizure or destruction by any force hostile to our military interests.
All those materials you saw stacked up were kit houses and everything else for their headquarters, their supplies. That's what it takes to supply an army.
The third objective, outlined in the President's aid memoir to General Graves, was to provide humanitarian assistance to the Russian people. National disorder had made thousands of Russians homeless, which had created an aggravated refugee problem. Hunger and sickness were ever present. Refugees sought shelter wherever possible, in railroad terminals, railroad cars, and in improvised shanties. The American Red Cross, working with the American Expeditionary Force, offered assistance to the homeless, the hungry, and the sick.
Pray that you don't have to flee in the winter.
Dr. R.B. Kiesler was the chairman of the American Red Cross Commission for Siberia. He and his staff, along with nurses and doctors, wrote an inspiring chapter into American Red Cross tradition. Beyond these specific objectives, General Graves and his men were to avoid any involvement in the erupting internal affairs of Russia. This presidential directive was easier issued than followed, but General Graves, a West Point graduate from the class of 1889, adhered to these policies with great perseverance during the precarious time of his expedition to Siberia.
You recognize those jackets? Those coats they're wearing? Oh, ooh. Yeah, those are the guards for the Wicked Witch.
To the American soldiers of this expeditionary force, the challenge of accomplishing our objectives was monumental, and military life in Siberia, to say the least, was unusual.
They still have horse and buggy, but they had 4 railroad lines for electrical use of their trolley cars, because this is the only way you can destroy the golden age, man. You got to turn the world against it to end all wars.
The 27th Infantry Regiment, under the command of Colonel Henry D. Steyer, had sailed from the Philippines to Vladivostok. 2 of its companies established rail security between Vladivostok and Nikolsk-Ussuri, while remaining elements established camp in the Vladivostok perimeter. The 31st Infantry Regiment had also sailed from the Philippines. They arrived in Vladivostok in mid-August 1918, under the command of Colonel Frederick H. Sargent. They established operations in the Khabarovsk region. Garrison duty in Siberia was mostly training.
Now that building in the background, later you could turn it into a university, a prison, asylum for the feeble-minded, you name it, because everywhere around the world, as you can see, remember where they are. Northern Siberia.
Siberian landscape became host to the marching, drilling, and target practice of military units, not only from the United States, but from Japan, China, Britain, Canada, France, and Italy as well.
Look at the size of that. I don't know. The spirit is telling me I should probably check in and say hi and make sure I'm still streaming. Hopefully everything's still working out. Wonderful, wonderful. That's now I don't need to pray for it. Now I know I can keep praying for this and not worry about praying for something else. Look at all the size of these buildings in the background. In Siberia, they're going to rescue the Tsar or kill the Tsar. You wonder why and I'm not saying or trying to make this connection for sure, but I'm just saying that you wonder how the blood could run up to the bridles. 1 million horses got killed in this war, and they were everywhere. I did pre-watch this video. Now, does anybody think that the way they put this last machine gun in place on the left flank, why is it set so far back, and why doesn't anybody say anything? If you have any ideas, put them in the comments. Those are the machine guns shooting at the water. And these are the people from Japan and other countries going like, we like your weapons very much, we'll buy them.
Our American Expeditionary Force was part of a combined military representation. The Supreme Allied War Council, fearing the results of the Brest-Litovsk Treaty, directed military forces to northern Russia as well as Siberia. In this latter operation, Japan had agreed to a United States proposal that she join this multinational expedition. General Kikuzo Otani of the Imperial Japanese Army was the senior Allied officer present and was given command by the Supreme Allied War Council. The American Expeditionary Force, however...
Look at that. I see a French flag, a Japanese flag. I'm not good with flags.
Remained autonomous under the command of General Graves. Even so, much of the military activity in the Siberian sector required careful coordination and mixed representation.
Oh my goodness, was this an international rescue or hit? What in tarnation? Men, as your commanding officer, I think we should all agree it's time to free Dorothy.
Vladivostok assumed the appearance of an international settlement, and its railroad station, an important military center, was under a rotating guard from each of the military forces stationed in that city.
I don't know if this guy, hey, we want to watch a film about the American expeditionary forces. We don't care about those people who probably did the hard work. We were there. We did it. We were the ones that we were best friends with Russia, man. We were best friends with Russia. This hurts me to this day.
This was the eastern terminal of the Great Trans-Siberian Railroad. Now it became a reception center for military and civilian travel. And the city itself was a reflection of the currents which were racing across all of Russia. Center for military and civilian travel.
I just want to get another look at the Trans-Siberian, because that's what you got to build. Just like, wait till John Levy should get his eyes on this thing. That's what they need in the northern Siberia. And look at this carriage that goes by. That's for the 1%. I'll stop it real quick and let you get a good long look at it. I know you wanted to see it more.
And the city itself was a reflection of the currents which were racing across all of Russia. In the Golden Horn Bay area, the arrival of Allied vessels was increasing. The flagship of our American Asiatic fleet, the USS Brooklyn, under the command of Admiral Rogers, arrived in port in the fall of 1918.
That's just a huge boat. See that car race by?
In the Golden Horn Bay area, the arrival of Allied vessels was increasing. The flagship of our American Asiatic fleet, the USS Brooklyn, under the command of Admiral Rogers, arrived in port in the fall of 1918. General Graves, with members of his staff, and John Caldwell, the U.S. consul in Vladivostok, visited Admiral Rogers to discuss our Siberian operation. While this review was taking place, the sailors and Marines from the USS Brooklyn spent much of their time going through ship and shore drill.
Man, we are more than halfway through this, and this celebrated fighting machine. Well, what are you guys doing there? Just partying in Vladivostok?
Flagships of other countries represented in the Siberian expedition were also riding anchor in the harbor. The British cruiser Suffolk provided support to the land-based units from that country.
And I'm going to use this time to remind you how far away this part of World War I is from everything else that's going on in the trenches. They're in France, Germany. Remember all that?
The 1st Ninth Hampshires were one of the British units. This parade along Svetlanskaya Street was prior to their rail movement to the city of Omsk, where Russian Admiral Alexander Kolchak had seized power and established a dictatorship throughout Siberia and eastern Russia.
Was it possible with the era of double agents that some thought it was a rescue, some thought it was an assassination, but all countries were going to be in on it? And finally, the person that they called Tsar Nicholas II and his family was going to be rubbed out in biblical style, all their heirs and everybody else. Mere speculation? Some truth, an echo of the past?
The involved and confusing internal situation in Russia was a constant concern to Allied presence in Siberia. General Graves was realizing the significance of Secretary Baker's comment about eggshells loaded with dynamite. Military parades along Svetlanskaya Street were a standard part of the training regimen. This one included units from all Allied countries represented in the Siberian expedition.
For crying out loud, is this a rescue, an assassination, a war, or just boys sent over there to parade around? What are you doing over there?
By now, the citizenry of Vladivostok was becoming accustomed to the drum beats, the martial music, and the cadence.
feel like we're watching the review of the Olympics. All these countries marching by, doing. Oh, we got audio. Tug of war. Do you believe in miracles?
In Vladivostok, Canadian soldiers hosted a spirited Allied athletic contest. And at Khabarovsk, Siberia, where part of the 27th Infantry was garrisoned, a Wild West show must have looked pretty strange to the local populace.
Hey, don't mess with the 27th, man. They can ride and they can shoot, but we haven't seen them shoot yet. But they're over there in northern Siberia for something.
Just as strange to our troops was the sight of Ataman Kalmykov's Cossacks, who were part of Alexander Kolchak's all-Russian army in Siberia. These fierce-looking Cossacks were something to watch.
Don't look at all the houses in the background. Look at what they're doing here. This is war. This is the Great War in Siberia. We're going to get into it. This video is not finished, not by a darn sight, Lord willing.
In the spring
We must defend Helm's Deep.
of 1919, the Russian Railway Service Corps, a non-combatant unit, commanded by American Colonel John Stevens, was given responsibility for maintaining rail operations along the Trans-Siberian Railroad, over which Czech military units were reaching Vladivostok on their troubled journey home. Adventures along the vast area serviced by the Trans-Siberian were daily occurrences. Each Allied country had assigned sectors of control responsibility. No one could ever be quite certain as to what the next day would bring. At Harbin, Manchuria, the Trans-Siberian Railroad served the vital transfer point for passenger and freight travel between China, Siberia, and Russia. Protection of this rail center was essential to the Allies. Travel along the railroad was quite another problem. clearance of damaged or destroyed Russian trains was a frequent necessity. Debris, dynamited tracks, and other obstacles were the results of the internal turmoil which was raging throughout Russia.
Wow.
The rail traffic along the Trans-Siberian was a mixture of the divergent interests operating in this area.
Good thing they have that
One of the
hospital.
most essential uses of the Trans-Siberian was to transport the sick and wounded back to Vladivostok.
All right, there's 2.5 minutes left, and we're finally getting to see why they showed that hospital car was train number one, car number one was the hospital car. And we're going to be getting into what was going on while they were showing all their parades and everything else, putting on their brave face real soon, because it was a real war going on. And who are the Cossacks really? The Cossacks? White Russians, red Russians. We'll get into it shortly.
American military doctors and nurses from the field hospital that was part of our expeditionary force were confronted with wounded soldiers, typhus cases, severe frostbite, and related ravages from the Siberian weather. This evacuation hospital was commanded by Colonel Thomas E. Scott. "17 American nurses were with our expeditionary force. They were under the supervision of Chief Nurse K.C. Hannon and were stationed at our field hospital in Tyumen, Siberia. From August 1918 through December 1919, American soldiers guarded rail depots.
Look at that. They brought them all outside like they're working at a Japanese Nissan factory in the 1980s to do their exercise together. Now watch. This isn't their first day doing it.
War materiel and supervised German and Austrian prisoners who had been incarcerated when Russia had been in the war. In January 1920, Czech units were safely in Vladivostok and were being evacuated to their own country. World War I had ended, and military supplies were no longer subject to hostile seizure. Conditions inside Russia dictated no further use of our military expedition. Washington instructed General Graves to remove his entire operation. By April 1920, he and his American Expeditionary Force would but an adventure to be recorded in history books and preserved on this precious film taken by Signal Corps cameramen of the United States Army.
The big picture. American Expeditionary Forces in Siberia. So we'll have to look in to see, where is the whole, Siberian, and we'll see some of the other pictures. We'll look them up. I know remember that I opened up that one. So, hey, Muddy Orphans, I see you're a new face here. Glad to see you here. Glad to see everybody else sticking around, engaged. So what were they doing there? And you know what? I'm going to turn on the air. I'm going to turn on the air conditioner. I had that off because when I was playing that, get the audio, I was worried about it. Now that I'm going to talk right into it, you'll see. Did you see that straight out of? Did you see what it was? Straight out of how can you believe, there was a time when it was only going to be, you know, what was it, 2 weeks, and that we were going to self quarantine, and then to be okay. And it was, back then we could joke about it. They could sell some T-shirts like, ha ha, straight out. Now you can get them for $1 at the Dollar General. When Dollar General is not the one where things are really just always $1. No, they're kind of like regular prices. It's like one of those mini Walmarts. In case there's not a Dollar General in your town, let's pick something here. Anybody want to come on? I'll put an invite in. You have to hit this thing that says copy it to the clipboard. And you paste it. And then don't forget to hit chat. What's this? The Polar Bear Expedition. So here's the American Expeditionary Force. After that rah thing there, just go over there to march in parades. We find out, in a little bit more, well, just a different style. Involved in the Russian Civil War. That's where we pick up the story here with the American Expeditionary Forces, Siberia. And this happened after the October Revolution. Remember that, 1919, wasn't it, or something? Where 1918 to 1920. That was, hey, we don't want to fight in World War I anymore. We're going to go take over our country because Tsar Nicholas II is the beast. He's the Antichrist. That's what they were saying. They didn't think it was Nero. They thought it was Tsar Nicholas II. So this force was part of the larger Allied North Russian intervention. Oh, good. I wanted to see that one too. So I'm going to open that, slide that to the front, and look at this because I want to see this one town, give you an idea of how far north we're talking here. While the rest of the Civil War was going on in the trenches. There was this other star fort somewhere up there. Hey, that's a nice look up there. Got the domes, those onion domes. Got an old star fort wall being used as a public beach. Nah, I don't think so. Got some tower there looking pretty capable of absorbing something. Here we have an angel attacking the devil. Maybe he's the one that cast him in the pit. That's the coat of arms of Archangelisk. It's Archangel. The name of that town is Archangel. Do you mind if I call it Archangel? And here's a canal. Look at the canal there. And here's where it is. So it's on this strategic location right here at this inlet of this famous sea. There's an island in here. I wonder if I could find it. It's by Archangel. I think it's called Bacteria Island or Plague Island. Yeah, that's what it's called. Plague Island. So maybe they were going there. So here's St. Petersburg. You know how far north that is. Well, that's way up there, man. And look, Archangel is even more north. You can't tell, but it is. And it's not the Black Sea, it's the White Sea. So here is the Vienna Fort, the Vienna in Archangel. Your basic redoubt, so there had to be more of it than this, where this was just the beginning of it. Because it goes out into the river, Well, you'll see when I look up Plague Island. Hey, Michael the Archangel kind of reminds me sometimes of St. George. Hey, there's another view of that onion dome. Looks like it's getting its repair on. Looks like it's all scaffolded up. Wonder if it gets one of those ones that gets big. Somewhat bigger. So I think it's still capable of doing that energy that they talk about that none of us really understand how it works because it makes no sense, especially that mercury. Using that to spin steam turbines. Oh my goodness, you should see what Tommy's been showing me on some of that stuff. Tommy's still in a lot of pain, man. Busy. He's got a doctor's appointment mañana and also the day after mañana. How come there's no pictures of Plague Island, and why do we need? Hey, they're still using their electric trolleys there. Those are the same ones that, by Vladivostok. Oh, you probably already figured that out. Look, they got money that has these pentagons on it. Check it out. It's structured just like basalt columns. Right here. See? They're like those basalt columns. And they're always going to be that way because when they get pushed on each side, like if this was a circle, it would get flattened out as much as it could on each side. So when a cell, like a blood cell, a water, it always gets pushed like this when it's frozen. Muscle cells. It's not a volcano. It's not an old tree. Believe what you want to believe, though. I just enjoy the debate of it. What's all this stuff here? This is ancient writing that says, don't bet on the races. Come on, this is going slow. Hey, they're building everything because they need to keep those onion domes with their bronze, gold, whatever. They need that working. These guys are, when I was like going like, hey, look, a star for it. I never figured that you guys be going like, look at that. That makes free energy, but that's cool. I mean, it's super cool. Wow, look at that. I went on a ride like this. This claims to be the world's tallest wooden shingle family house. There is a ride like this, a roller coaster in Dollywood that looks exactly like that. That's a mining equipment, I think. But that is, I'm stoned. Here we got some more of this stuff. That's how you light up a football field. Here's your bridal dress contest. So the weather does get nice even now up there in Siberia. So we can see back here, that's a Star Fort Corners. Kind of a weird balcony situation. I'm not sure. So this definitely just looks like they probably faced it. It's probably this. They just covered up the old Star Fort building. That makes more sense. War. Hey, where's that Plague Island? I'm looking for Plague Island. Wikipedia. Are you going to give it up? In 1584, Ivan ordered the founding of New Colmagri, which would later be renamed after the nearby Archangel Michael Monastery. At the time, access to the Baltic Sea was still mostly controlled by Sweden. So while Archangelisk was icebound in the winter, it remained Moscow's almost sole link to the sea trade. Boy, good thing somebody made that big canal. Local inhabitants, called Pomors, were the first to explore trade routes to northern Siberia as far as the Trans-Siberian Railroad, Ural city of Mangazia, and beyond. Wow, it wasn't until December 1613, so they say. What? There's a period of history called the Time of Troubles. Well, at least it's called that. We'll look at it. I can't. Oh, Operation Barbarossa. That's where the Nazis tried to take over Stalingrad. They said, come on. We have this one opened up, ready to look at. So the only last rabbit trail I kind of want to clear up is that Plague Island. How do you spell plague? Let's see if Google will bring it up. Oh man, it's not plaque. There it is. It looks just like a kidney. Remember, I've shown you a couple of these, and they're always used as plague islands. That's too small. That's why I always like to go over here and make them large so that when you can see them and I can see them. I mean, for crying out loud. Ooh, this one's bigger. So this is part of their star fort too. This is what they call Plague Island, and it looks from above like a kidney. I've done a couple of videos on this, but I wonder how old this piece of metal is. How many boats it's tied up. I should do another video on it and why it looks like a kidney, because that's where it filters your poisons and whatnot. See, I told you it's a rabbit trail. This is way up there it's by the Siberia, where the White Sea, where we're studying. It's that river, that inlet, that when it freezes over, that can take that canal. I was pointing it out so that you could remember it, that it goes to Moscow. Moscow can send them food in the wintertime. Just how you fix the old buildings before you fix them. If you want to see that, go to Telluride, Colorado. Go in the back. They're all braced like that. You've probably seen it in my videos. Hey, what's that? That looks like a star fort. 7 fascinating Russian island fortresses. There's one. It's in Tardistan. That's supposed to be the deepest parts of hell. for some people. They're considering now that this could be the deepest part of hell. I've heard that one. Hey, there's another one in St. Petersburg. That's right up there in those same islands where the Plague Island is. I wonder if you do this. Can you open it up? It doesn't let you make it bigger. You'd have to save it. I don't want to. I have too many saved. Hey, that's called Fort Alexander. Plague Fort. My bad. My bad. We could have looked it up and I wouldn't have had to go plaque. Hey, this is that Vladivostok. It made it. They still got their guns there. Poor Han Tuva. Poor Han Tuva. This fort is not looking good. Not looking good, not even a little bit. Why can't you open these up in another tab? That's it? Oh, that's right. This is just a rabbit trail anyway. That's how you throw up a piece of junk. After you take over a country, you go yeah, we know how to do it. Give me some rebar and some concrete and some steel, and we'll have your slaves living like this, paying rent, and someday we'll hook them up to 5G, and they won't care because they love video games. And they love that pornography, too. What's this? Ex-Soviet ghost town in the middle of nowhere. Ghost town. Vozrozhdenia Island sounds ironically, in case you know its history, the place where biological weapons tests were conducted. Is the Lord good? Thank you, Lord. You know, I have no idea what tabs we're looking at right now, but the Spirit is moving. I know it. At least that's what I base my whole life on. It's times like this. So we're right there. The place where biological weapons tests were conducted. I wonder if that's what those nations were all hanging around up there, going here, you are the guys that get this, protect this town and this area. And we haven't even looked at the casualties and stuff, but you guys get the idea. It was much worse than they portrayed it in that film. We'll see how long this rabbit trail goes, because I don't think we're going to solve whether this was a rescue or a hit or a double cross. Biological weapons were conducted, and which has become another ghost town on the map of the CIS. Even today, doesn't give hints of an oasis in the middle of the Aral Sea. In the 1500s and onward, an island worthy of special attention of the Tsar. Wow, you can't even highlight things anymore? What's going on? Appeared on the surface of the Aral Sea. Fishing and hunting grounds, cozy bays, and a considerable Lebensraum. That's breathing room. That's what the Germans would call it. They're those guys that go they're the filthy Huns, or if you like them, then you go no, we're the awesome Aryans. So we're still fighting about that, because one's going we're the true white race, the other is going no, we're the true white race, and then they made a bunch of white slaves, and we're going we're white too. And they're going, hey, they're both laughing at us, going man, if you haven't had the tap on your shoulder and you're not at least in the Freemasons, you're not white to them, man. You'll just be considered not Jewish. You're going to be like one of those Moncriefs, or somebody that, whoever that guy was that helped Dracula. Is that what I'm thinking of? Shoot, I lost track of where I am. Cozy Bays. It was called after Nicholas I and used as a natural reserve about 100 years. and it was Nicholas I. No, we're not going to have to go to Nicholas II, who proposed to rename it this Vazhadinia Island, emphasizing its chosenness and beauty. Well, what nothing better to do than stick a plague island on it. After that, and other authorities, after that, I wonder if it means and other authorities, or let's see. After that, another authorities and the beginning of a new history had come, because it is difficult to find the best location for disposition of the top secret Soviet facility where biological weapons are being tested. The few people who were living there were evicted by building military facilities and transporting variety of equipment and machinery. Remoteness from civilization and difficult access to the archipelago on the border of the Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan turned Vazhadinia Island into a paradise for testers. Sounds more like the island of Dr. Moreau to me. There it is. That's the bottom of the dried sea today. The sea's gone too. What? What's going on here? The first expedition appeared there in 1936, but they lost track of it from 1919 to 1936, and the sea went away. Man, I need to get a drink of coffee here. What did I miss? And they decided to go back and study it 3 years after FDR got elected in our great country. Oh, man. Do I see that last sentence here? I'm trying to speed read this while I'm lighting a cigarette. Something about a great patriotic war. Man, we learned about an hour ago about all those patriotism. Appeal to that for your war. Let's see. Great Patriotic War looks like it's going to be abbreviated GPW. I might or might not go with that. The first expedition, and that's where it just goes here. You know, here's that sea today. Excuse me. So the new history, few people living there. They're just marching around in Vladivostok, at least, partying it up during the war. Oh, wait, those guys got, a bunch of people got hurt. We just don't know how many. The military town, Erlisk 7, also known as Katubek, on Renaissance Island in its best years. That must be where this arrow is. I don't see it. Is that it? Bottom of the dried Aral Sea today. Oh, this is an advertisement. The first expedition appeared there in 1936. Ivan Vilkanov, who is considered the godfather of the bacteriological program of the USSR, led it. The experiments were carried out based on plague, cholera, and tularemia bioagents. Then the Great Patriotic War came and everything had stopped. The end of the Great Patriotic War was the beginning of boost in testing. We're dealing with a translation of somebody by English as a second language here. In the northern part of Vazhadinia, Alice 7, also known as Kantubek, appeared. It was a kit town with houses and amenities for the military. There was also built for the unique 4-lane airfield Barnon, built on the principle of the wind rows, of the wind currents. A total of a couple of kilometers from the house of the military was located driveway scenic research laboratory. How many cards in a deck? 52. That notorious field research laboratory, which was being conducted experiments with strains of Tilleremia. I don't know what that one is, but probably bad. And many other so-called viruses. The corpses of experimental animals were burned, organizing an inconspicuous funeral outside the walls of the laboratory. Explosions of shells with anthrax, plague, and other biological agents, including artificial ones, that's that gain of function, took place in the southern part of Vozrodinya. After each test, special measures were carried out to clean up the area, and the testers themselves were sent into straight out of quarantine. Why won't this go away? They close it there. American intelligence claimed that the banned anthrax was produced on the territory of the United Soviet Socialist Republic, the burial grounds with tons of Siberian plague were placed exactly on Berezindina Island. If at first nobody noticed all the consequences of those tests, then the acceleration of the shallowing of the Aral Sea, boy, it shallowed quite a bit, didn't it? Which led to the transformation of the Berezindina into a peninsula as early as 2009. Huh. So how'd the fishing go? Did that affect the fishing? Oh, this used to be where the shore was, but now you can't fish from there. Well, you didn't want the plague anyway. Your boat's not doing you any good. They say that they turned it into a peninsula. Something turned it into a peninsula. It was a boat tank, baby. Plague Island, that was fun. Time of Troubles was a period of political crisis during the Tsardom of Russia, which began in, the 1500s. That's basically, you might as well say, the 17th century, because it's about to turn 1600, with the death of Frodo, and ended in 1613 with the ascension of Michael I of the House of Romanov. Now those are what the Russians will tell you. Those are the good guys right there. They're the Romanovs. It was a time of lawlessness and anarchy following the death of Frodo, a weak and possibly intellectually disabled ruler who died without an heir. Well, that's one good way for a rewrite to start. Hey, let's start it like this. Yeah. This one great king was feeble-minded and crazy, but his death ended the Rurik dynasty, leading to a violent succession crisis with numerous usurpers and false Dimitris, imposters, claiming the title of a czar. Then there was a famine which killed almost a third of the population. I never heard that before. Oh, wait, I have heard about that before, but I don't know if Russia or Wikipedia is just putting that in there to make it seem like it goes into the book of Revelation. It's not the whole world, but it is provocative. It is intriguing. The times of trouble ended
with the election of a Romanov, Michael Romanov. He was the czar, and he got elected by a parliament, Zemsky Sobar parliament in the czardom, the Tartariadom. I'm just kidding. Czar and Tartar. It's all, that's crazy. Anyway, I just didn't want you to think that Zemsky Sobar was a name. So that's how when the Romanov establishment, and you know what they went at it with? The Habsburgs. You know when they went at it, how long, they went at it with the Habsburgs? The Romanovs and the Habsburgs for 300 years. And when did the Habsburgs dynasty end? When did the Habsburgs dynasty end? House of Habsburg, better known as House of Austria, is a German dynasty who once upon a time was the most prominent royal house in Europe in what they called the second millennium. Takes its name from the Habsburg Castle Star Fort, baby. Built in 1020, present day Switzerland, the Roman guards. And how long? I'm going to come say hi here in the chat room, but I want to find out. Well, when did this? So we got the Romanovs, and that lasted up until World War I. These guys are not pretenders. They're saying they were founded in 1020. When did it end? When did they stop being the House of Habsburg? Where's that Habsburg thing, man? It had to have an end. Is it still going on? Oh. The House of Habsburg still exists and owns the Austrian region of the Order of the Golden Fleece and the Imperial and Royal Order of St. George. So here's the head of today's Habsburg Empire, what's left of it. You want to buy some insurance? Hey, stop. Wait, you want to buy some insurance? There's your hair of the Habsburg Empire. You know the Habsburgs. You've seen them everywhere with their famous double-headed eagle. Yes. Those Habsburgity doodah days. See, I think they kind of got like a phoenix looking shape of their feathers looking at the eagles. This kind of looks eagle-esque. All this means stuff. Oh my goodness, look at this. Is that a goat hanging there? Habsburgs. We got onto the Habsburg. So there he is. There's your Habsburg. He appeared on this program called After Dark in 1989. They're still around. What, you thought this was all new? He was born here in this town, in Bavaria. Still got all these people here, royalties. Guess what? They're white. They're white.
I like tea, and I like my toast just a little burnt. Man, these guys are driving me crazy. What is going on with all of that insanity? Welcome, unknown sender. Glad to see you're posting there. Who is that William of Orange? And what is with that orange? Why can't you rhyme that word? Oh, Medici, medicine. And that queen of the Medici, she's the one who had all those people caught on fire. She's the one who did that St. Bartholomew's massacre. Are you rethinking about the same one, that Catherine de Medici? Is that who you're thinking of, unknown sender? Aren't you glad I didn't say banana? We'll just cut right to the punchline there, chat room. Now that I'm in here, we'll just be cutting. Good night, Luther. Thank you so much, brother. He's on a different time zone. It's like my mouse isn't working sometimes because it worked when I put it on. I wonder have I been kind of sketchy? Has there been a delay or anything like that? I hope not. Catherine de Medici. Do you guys know what that St. Bartholomew's Day massacre is? Oh, we've got too much to go over. What is this? Evgenivka incident. American heroes at the scene of their defiance of Jap army. This is World War I. Remember, we were just talking about Siberia. Major Fitzhugh Aldrice and the officers of his command, who with 250 American soldiers faced a Japanese army of 4,520 to 1 in Siberia and prevented the execution of a Yankee sentinel. If you shoot him, you'll have to shoot us all, and we'll sell our lives dearly, was Major Aldrice's warning. He's the last officer to the right. This picture was taken in front of the station at Evgenivka, Siberia. All right, all right. This even made news in Bismarck, North Dakota. I'm not saying anything about Bismarck, North Dakota that they haven't already heard. All right. So this was big news. Allied intervention in the Russian Civil War. So that's what they were doing there while those other people were fighting the other World War I. There was Allied intervention in the Russian Civil War. It consisted of a series of multinational military expeditions in 1918. Remember, World War I famously ended at the 11th minute of the 11th hour on the 11th day of the 11th month. Something like that. So their stated goals, they wanted to help the Czechoslovak Legion. Hey, that looks Romanov. Because it's not that double-headed eagle, it's that griffin thing. All they wanted to do was help them to secure supplies of munitions at those Russian star forts way up there by that river. And to be friends. Oh, we were trying to help the Tsar. I'm leaning towards rescue. Or plague. Allied efforts were hampered by divided objectives, war weariness from the overall global conflict, and a lack of domestic support. These factors, together with the evacuation of the Czechoslovak Legion, so they got left there high and dry, compelled, they just weren't going to beat those commies, compelled the Allied powers to, well, actually, the Tsar's dead. So they had to leave. This hit or rescue failed, so all the Allied powers went, okay, we're leaving. And who knows, maybe they wanted to hold him for hostage or something, you know. But here it is again on that Trans-Siberian Railroad. It happened there. And that was really the long way to get around. Like, remember when I was going like, John Levy should look at this thing here. It's that station. Well, I thought there'd be more. Really? That's it? This is what you're showing us here. Here's this. Maybe there's more pictures of the Vladivostok station. Well, we'll just look at that town of Vladivostok. I don't think we looked at that yet. So that's Starfort. Museum now. University. Coney Park. Coney Island, I mean. Another central square. Statue in the middle. Yeah, sure, we believe that's who you say it is. That is a Siberian tiger, in case you didn't know it. Hey, what's up? There it is, somewhere up there. Over here. I think. Like, this is the White Sea. This is where the other one is, the Baltic. I think. Those big maps are hard because they're not flat. There's a little steampunk ship. There's a kit town they did to reinforce the Star Fort. They'll, put some signs out front. That's my building now. I'll keep it. Clean up the streets a little bit. Next thing you know, you're in business. Hey, there's that. We know those guys. They're marching. That's the Allied Expedition Forces. That's what it kind of looked like in 1982. It's still using their electric trains, same ones we saw those people riding on in the early 1900s. Thought we'd get to see at least some sort of a, picture of those magnificent train stations. Here's some peasants waiting at a train station. Hi, peasants. They're doing some dancing. I thought the cars for that, you could have anything on there. Now we're talking. Look at that. That's a train station. They know not what they do. $19.10. Still has an Ames shovel. They ship those all over the world to fake that gold mining and stuff. Those boots look warm and efficient. I wonder if those boots are as comfortable as they look. 5,000 people from that American expeditionary force went up there trying to help somebody. They didn't talk too much about, why they were there in the big picture. But it was, there was a group of allies that wanted to help in the Russian Civil War. And I mean, get up there and get with it. They kind of left that part of the history out. Now, here is a Bolshevik soldier. And, he's dead. They shot him, so they were at war up there. Well, there's another one. And they had a lot of frostbite. It was cold up there, colder than it looked on some of those videos. We saw how close it was up there to Archangel, because it gets frozen. And you know what happened? The morale of the American soldiers plummeted. They didn't say anything about that in the video. Because here they were, they signed up to help. Well, let's talk about the withdrawal, because, there's that November 11th again. So one more year to go. It was the armistice was on November 11th, 1918. So they're still stuck there as late as October 1919. No wonder they were getting upset. These wonderful heroes who love to have parades when you just get the big picture. Following the Allied armistice with Germany, members and friends of the soldiers of the Allied American Expeditionary Forces began writing to their newspapers and circulating petitions to their representatives in the U.S. Congress asking for the immediate return of the fourth force from North Russia. In return, the newspapers editorialized for their withdrawal, and their congressmen raised the issue in Washington, D.C. Meanwhile, aware of not only the change in their mission, but also of the armistice on the Western Front. You talk about keeping somebody like a mushroom. That's what they were. They didn't even know the war was over, the people that were over there fighting in Archangel, Siberia. Meanwhile, aware of not only the change in their mission, but also of the armistice, so they did know, and the fact that the port of Archangel was now frozen as early as November. They couldn't leave if they wanted to. The morale of the American soldiers plummeted. They asked their officers why they were fighting Bolshevik soldiers in Russia and did not receive a clear answer other than that they had to fight to survive and avoid the Bolshevik army pushing them into the Arctic Ocean like it was Dunkirk or Gallipoli. Early in 1919, after a very restless winter, instances of rumored and actual mutinies in the Allied ranks became frequent. It was reported by the Alaska Daily Empire that rumors of mutiny were bunk, and that Commander Major Nichols reported what gave rise to the story that Company 1 of the regiment had mutinied was an incident to which an order was misunderstood by a soldier who could not understand English well. It was, after all, an Allied expedition, if the truth be told. So all of these things, it was, see how they put it out for the common people? And aren't you glad that you don't buy that kind of stuff? How many times did I open that? So they have one in Siberia and another one in North Russia. Wanted to look at the Bears, the Yankees come back, because these were the ones I think were the actual hit squad. If there was a hit squad. That's their polar bear Whitechapel Cemetery memorial. They were tough. They were tough. In the summer of 1918, President Woodrow Wilson, at the urging of Britain and France, sent an infantry regiment. I wonder if I can make that bigger. Whoa, that's too big. To fight. He sent that regiment to North Russia to fight the Bolsheviks in hope of persuading Russia to rejoin the war against Germany. The 339 Infantry Regiment, with the 1st Battalion of the 310th Engineers and the 337th Ambulance and Hospital Companies, arrived at Archangel, Russia on September 4, 1918. About 75% of the 5,500 Americans who made up the North Russian Expeditionary Forces were from Michigan, not New York. Of those, a majority were from Detroit. The newspapers called them Detroit's own. They called themselves polar bears. They marched on Belle Island on July 4th, 1919. 94 of them were killed. Wow, that's too bad. In action after the United States decided to withdraw from Russia, but before Archangel Harbor thawed. So did they actually try to get them to walk back? Wow. How far along are we? So we're a little over 2 hours. I don't know how much more. I like I said earlier, I don't think that we're going to be able to, decide whether or not it was a hit or a rescue mission. But I think you can agree that something's going on there. I just put the link in there. If there's anybody that's got anything on their mind, anything they want to add, questions about World War One, there's a link. Let's while I'll hear it if somebody comes in. In the meantime, I had pulled up earlier a search for World War One, the ones that you can look out without copyright strikes, but we don't want to hear a Wikipedia audio. Oh, it's, we like to pretend that they just read it wrong. What's this? Yikes. This is what we're training our people to do? Is it going?
going on here? Did it not play? Aw. Come on. Still doing that tug of war. Uh-oh, harder than it looked. Down goes Frazier. You got steps. Now I've done this, and there are ways you can do it on top of the rope and pull yourself also. And you can also hang down and drop into a river, which is just, if it's high enough, you get that little tickle in your tummy. Oh, crunches, crunch it. How'd that black guy get in there? Wait, what? Oh, maybe there was some integration. And then we went all around the world teaching this to everybody. Oh, I don't need to pause it because it's not talking. So we saw, practice the grenades, and they went to war. And now it's all about war all the time. Maybe not in the United States anymore, but I'm telling you, you don't have to look far around the world. And it's not just the United States that's worried about China and their mafia-run government. Because buying a gun at Walmart and going out and shooting it in the range no way prepares you for walking through the mountains waiting 2 weeks to try to not be caught by surprise. So you have to defend yourself because you're protecting your family and you need everything to go right. It takes people that are with the same amount of dedication to run and hide and protect as it does to go out and waste your life fighting. Any fool can be taught to do this. And actually, it's not bad if you want to help you sweat, stretch, and eat organic. It might be better to do some of these exercises than that yoga. But however you stretch, it's not bad to defend yourself if somebody's trying to hurt you. Just don't go out looking, because you don't want to be those people that live by the sword. Right? I'm not saying go out and practice with the bayonet. Matter of fact, I'm saying don't go practice with the bayonet or any of this, especially slashing. This ought to be good. Different types of machetes. Once your mind gets turned to war, it becomes a competition. It's like obstacle golf. Yeah, I did it. Oh, I made it through this training. I'm a ranger. No, you're going to war. You're going to go kill villagers. See what we got going there? Fort Schaffner in Hawaii. That sounds like the art of self-defense is the key to being nonviolent. A lot of times, if you just look, if you're in shape enough that they're not going to want, like, wow, I don't want to have to even take a chance. Why wouldn't they move on if you're a healthy person? Otherwise, if they could just push you down and you could be there, 300 pound turtle on your back. And the only thing the way you're getting even, you think he's helping you up, they're just flipping you over so they can get your wallet. But you're going like, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me. I don't know. That one wasn't that good. Let's see if there's another free one. But how much are we in here? 2 hours and 28 minutes. Nobody watches these long ones anyway, so we might as well finish this off if there's something cool. Remember, we don't want any of Wikipedia. Well, there's a lot of stuff. I wonder if there's anything that, about that you could watch on Creative Commons about that Zoot riot. You guys have heard about that. Zoot riot. Go get a bottle of beer. Creative Commons. Hopefully there'll be something there. Oh, well, we'll have to look it up and I'll just read it to you. What were the Zoot riots? Why do I care? Why would I think you care? Maybe you'd be interesting to know that it's true, one, and it happened during World War II. And who knew what was going on? And what are these? Where do you usually hear this word?
Pogrom.
Which is aimed at the massacre or expulsion of an ethnic or religious group, particularly English language as a descriptive term for the 19th and 20th century attack on the Jews, which occurred in the Russian Empire. You can study about pogroms. You've probably heard about them. Well, there was one going on in Los Angeles, part of a series going on between June 3rd through the 8th, 1943, in Los Angeles particularly, which pitted American servicemen stationed in Southern California against white Latino and Mexican American city residents. It was one of the dozen wartime industrial cities that suffered race-related riots during the war in the summer of 1943, along with Mobile, Alabama, Beaumont, Texas, not far from where I was baptized and not far from where I live now with my little brother Tommy, Detroit, Michigan, and New York City. American servicemen and other white people from Los Angeles, that's what they mean by white Angelinos, attacked and stripped children, teenagers, and youths who were wearing Mexican-inspired clothing, ostensibly because they considered the outfits, which were made from large amounts of fabric, to be unpatriotic during World War II. Rationing of fabrics and certain foods was required at the time for the war effort. While most of the violence was directed towards Mexican American youth, African American, Italian American, and Filipino American youths who were wearing a Zoot suit were also attacked. The Zoot suit riots were related to fears and hostilities aroused by the coverage of the Sleepy Lagoon murders, where they accused somebody wearing a Zoot suit. Well, they sure taught these young men a lesson, didn't they? And this was an age where they still had gone back, and it was the mulatto laws were in effect. You couldn't be in a movie if you had, unless you couldn't be in the lead if you weren't whole, completely white. And this was the amount of fabric that was worth all of those riots. Too much fabric, boys. You don't love America. It was a mob hit. It was a mob hit. They were getting things in order. It was a Zoot suit riot. But there was that too much fabric when they probably stripped these girls too? More fabric than these extra 3-button breasts? Wide collar lapels? Don't get me in a fabric measuring contest. These guys are going to jail. No soldiers were arrested. Many Mexican American youth instead were arrested after being attacked. Thankfully, some of the ones that were stripped were given other clothes. You're under arrest. Oh. So there's the Zoot suit riot. Sorry about that. Showed these guys a little bit close in my mind when I thought I was still talking to you. So this is the amount of the extra fabric. This is your Zoot suit. Wide lapels. And their hats are straw, not fabric. These girls didn't deserve to be like, they had to put them in jail. Get in jail, girls. And look at these wide lapels on these guys. Zoot suit rioters, their clothes are too big. Well, that's what we were talking about. Well, it made it all the way through without making too big of a mistake of talking when I'm and watching and reading, thinking that I'm sharing. But that's really going to be enough for tonight. We have carried, carried a lot of water here. We've covered a lot of ground. And I want to So what I want to ask you all is, while it's breaking up here a little bit, I'll pray. I'm never going to sell you anything else. Why would I? I'm trying to prove that I have your best interest at heart. Amen. Hallelujah.